Thank you to all of those who joined from different time zones. Here in Alberta, the sun didn't raise that, and we are at minus 30 degrees. But my heart warms out when Vipulji asked me to come and join on a seminar with Indian officials. So great to see His Excellency Anshumanji, and I want to give a shout out to him and his colleagues, Ajay Baisaria ji, and in our area, Manish ji. They're all doing a great job. In Anshuman ji and his wife and everyone is doing great job in advancing the economic and cultural ties between two great democracies, Canada and India. And also people like Vipulji and Tejas and everyone working hard to deepen and strengthen those ties. As a Indo-Canadian, I'm always interested and look forward to participate in these kind of discussions. As a Minister of Infrastructure, on behalf of the Government of Alberta, it's my honor to be with you today. So I may be doing injustice to my officials and staff because I skip their notes every time I go talk about India, because I don't need any notes. So I know what's happening there. So I lived there long enough, and I still have family back home. So I'm still in touch with many of my former colleagues and everyone. So, but I'm quite impressed what Rahul presented just now. So I definitely want to have a copy of that presentation. And the next thing I'm going to do is ask our Invest Alberta. We also have an investment corporation to attract. It's a kind of single window process. We set up that Invest Alberta to facilitate and accelerate those deals. So I look forward to sign an MoU between Invest Alberta and Invest India soon, if possible. I also see others like Leah, one of the good infrastructure consulting company working in India. I'm in touch with Dr. Raju, your new president there. So they're doing important projects which are important not only to the nation but to the government, like the projects in Varanasi and other projects. So I'm pleased to see that. And as Government of Alberta, what we are doing to make life better for Albertans and Canadians is invest in modern infrastructure. For that, to actually legislate the criteria of project selection and prioritization. Just 10 days ago, I introduced and passed the Alberta Investment Accountability Act, which will give predictability and also certainty for Albertans and Canadians, what type of infrastructure we're going to invest, considering not only the current needs, but also the future needs. For example, COVID taught us recently, how important is infrastructure to carry on with our daily lives in a pandemic scenario. So that's why we introduced that Infrastructure Act. But, people often expect politicians as a magic to build every fancy infrastructure they think of. We have our own limitations of funding because somebody has to pay for it. So that's why our government actually is trying to pursue public-private partnership to encourage private investments. So which we are on track now, because we reduce corporate taxes. In Alberta has the lowest tax, 8%, and we don't have any provincial sales tax. So with all that, Alberta is probably the lowest, one of the lowest in North America out of the 50 states in US and 10 provinces in Canada. Probably we stand the lowest. And also we cut a lot of red tape to encourage private sector investment. And we are also using Canada Infrastructure Bank to finance vital infrastructure projects like broadband to rural communities or irrigation projects, because Alberta's strength is, natural resources. So we produce a lot of oil and gas. As a cold country, you would appreciate today, where I'm sitting in Calgary, it's minus 30. So without those comforts of the fossil fuels, reliable supply, will be freezing. So, but we are also looking at diversifying our economy. We are looking at clean tech. Other presenters talked about the importance of renewable and clean energy. So Alberta is the leader in technology development and supplying. For example, I have introduced one of the Alberta companies, Ever. Ever is a geothermal company. We connected them with Reliance in India, who are interested to explore that. Same way, there are many opportunities, but I'm glad to see India has opened it up. Recently, we realized during the previous waves of COVID, there were issues with oxygen supply, for example, in India, because although they have, but they couldn't move it because the roads were not suitable to move 40 feet sea container type trailers across the road. So that's why I'm very pleased to see Government of India is going to invest on roads and airports and seaports. So that's what in Alberta. So to compare between Alberta and India, Alberta, we're not dense population and we are spaced out. That's why we had to maintain these thousands of kilometers of roads and bridges. And we are also focusing on other projects like broadband and aviation, irrigation. So that's where our investments are going. But what is expected from our government is to bring in accountability, consistency in policy, and cut taxes and cut red tape, which we are on track. And that's why recently we could, I'm happy to mention that we could attract companies from India, tech companies, because although we are building on our strengths in energy and but we are also diversifying our economy. We're doing a lot of value add in our agriculture and forestry, which is a bright spot in our economy. I heard that India is recovering its economy post-pandemic, and you'll have 10% GDP. And Alberta will be the fastest in Canada with 7% GDP growth. So we worked really hard on Alberta recovery plan. We never stopped construction. In my department, we are on track to complete all the projects in construction, like 28 healthcare facilities, top-notch, world-class healthcare facilities, and we are building about 70 schools across the province, a lot of justice infrastructure. So when you talk about infrastructure, it touches every sector. So it's essential to deliver programs like much needed, the delivery of public programs. So it could be economic infrastructure like trade corridors, roads and bridges, airports, and all that, or social infrastructure like I mentioned, hospitals, schools, or the pipelines, which are essential in a big country like Canada. So we are focusing on all that, but there is a lot of potential between India and Alberta, and India and Canada. You mentioned companies like Fairfax, our good friend Prem Vatsa's group. They invested in aviation infrastructure there. Brookfield bought pipelines from my previous employer, Reliance. I mentioned air cargo, somebody mentioned. So Alberta airports like Calgary and Edmonton, they're on the important route to US. So all the cargo that right now you're transitioning in Alaska, Alberta airports will provide you very low cost options and for refueling. And also our runways are much wider and longer, suitable for any sort of aircrafts. So there are a lot of opportunities. And our premier, Jason Kenney, which Vipulji and others on the call are familiar, he's a good friend of India. He wants to develop. I mean, he was part of developing those relations in the past as a federal minister, and he can't wait till the COVID ends, and so we can go and sign up those memorandum of understandings and connect private sector investors, because there are a lot of opportunities. And recently I introduced him to my good friend, Tata Group Executive Chairman, Mr. Chandrasekharan. We invited him. He's waiting for the COVID to end. We're talking to other companies like biotech. I spoke to Dr. Krishna Allah, and I know that one of the Alberta companies has signed and exploring opportunity with the BioE. I spoke to Mahima Datla. She said they're negotiating that deal. There are a lot of opportunities in Alberta and Canada for Indian companies, but as our job as politicians is to provide that consistent, transparent, accountable policies so investors have certainty. We heard about the difficulties in the past. When governments change, we should not be tempted to undo what the previous governments did, like tearing off contracts, like power purchase agreement contracts or anything. That won't give certainty and predictability to investors, particularly Canadian investors. They are very good partners, but they look for ease of doing business and predictability, and we had to create the trusting relationships. As soon as the COVID ends, we would invite all the Indian companies to come and look at our opportunities in Alberta and Canada, particularly in Alberta, because we are going to open it up for clean tech, and there are opportunities in hydrogen, for example. We want to build a lot of industrial plants producing hydrogen. We already had few projects announced, 3-4 projects. We're also looking at carbon capture and sequestering. That's other opportunity for Indian companies. I heard that India is looking at 1,000 gigawatts. So that's, if your land base is not enough, Canada is a large country, second largest in the world, and so there are opportunities, because although it's cold here, -30 in Alberta, but the sun shines most of the time. So your companies can come and look at Alberta as a potential opportunity. So as I said, I can't wait to connect Invest Alberta and Invest India. And with the help of Anshumanji and his colleagues, we'll try to move forward that agenda. But glad to be here. We would like to take questions, but I'll stop there. Thank you for the opportunity.